We need to have a standardized of pharmaceutical reps.
The people that provide education, the doctors.
Who is the chairman and CEO.
The fascination the public has. The impact on society, the impact on unemployment.
I really believe MSLs not only need to be given the tool, but the training and the true understanding of what these tools are capable.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Lester Cruz Serrano, who's the head of Global Medical Affairs and Health Sciences Strategy at Cognizant, a very well-known software technology and consulting company. It's a global organization worldwide. And Dr. Lester, I'm really excited to have you here today on the podcast. Welcome.
Will, thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here with you. Very excited. I always watch your podcast, so to be here with you is an amazing feeling. So thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you because your story is a very interesting story, right? You started out as a physician, and you eventually transitioned into industry, but in a different area of industry.
Right.
A lot of times in the audience knows there's a lot of times the people that we talk to who have been a physician, a pharmacist, etc., they typically work in the pharmaceutical industry in more traditional roles. But you took a very, very different path, which I think is very interesting. So maybe we can start there by you telling the audience a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely, Will, and actually by accident, but I did get to this place as a physician, like you said, having all the bedside experience, then eventually transitioning into clinical trial activities within, different departments and whatnot, and then looking for my next evolution. Well, what will it be next? And then came across some, interesting thoughts about what was I going to do, how could I break into pharma, and came across your certification, the BCMAS certification from the ACMA. So by doing that, I was able to get all the, foundations of what really pharma really was wanting you to know and to invest your time. Me not having any experience on the pharma side, just coming from academia, it was really helpful. So I came across an opportunity at the time. Cognizant was looking for a medical advisor for their first open industry SaaS platform.
Wow. And
this was no easy undertake. We're talking about 7 of the top 15 biopharma were coming together to launch this SaaS open platform that was going to share, documents, data, information, streamline the clinical trial activity, and they were looking for a medical advisor. And there I was sitting in that chair, getting the privilege to run, all of those pharma companies, but from a software technology company. I think that's what you alluded, that was a little bit different because I did not go into pharma.
Right.
If not that I went into a software technology company. And me being a physician that was very manually driven, hand and pen, and paper and faxing and scanning a lot of the documents, here I am now having a seat of seeing cutting edge technology that Cognizant was developing in order to streamline the conduction of clinical trial activities. So I think, a very unique by accident, but when I look back, I think it was definitely the right move. It brought me into the world of technology. And a lot of people see me as a pioneer within this space, but I look at you and I know that you have some history also within being an MSL and also being experienced within a technology vendor. And that was something that really attracted me to your experience and your and what you can bring in terms of upgrading my knowledge within this particular field.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes, as you know, I worked at Viva, and it was a great experience. And I think what you're doing is really great. And I think the audience probably be interested to understand a little bit more about what does Cognizant do? How does it work with pharma partners? Tell us a little bit about that.
So Cognizant is a great partner. It's a partner of biopharma, not only in life sciences, but healthcare, medical devices, and other industries as well. And we just partner with these amazing companies to help them streamline with their technology, bring cutting-edge technology to their processes, workflows, and we also outsource a lot of our talent, our people, to support with those initiatives or activities. So when you look at Cognizant, is 350,000 employees worldwide, Fortune 500 company, and we have been blessed, at least in my experience, working with the life sciences space, helping a lot of these big pharma, like I said, 7 of the top 15 biopharma, and helping them streamline the clinical trial landscape, how can we cut up some time and how we conduct those activities, and really digitalizing a lot of the processes so they are automated instead of manual processes. So within that journey, I've been privileged. Now this platforms that we offer are in more than 100 countries.
Wow.
60,000 clinical research institutions across the world, and very excited about the opportunity to have a seat in a unique space, because not only do I see pharma and I work with their teams, understand their culture, understand their some of their goals and objectives, but then how does that fit within the clinical research institutions and whatnot. So I think that is a uniqueness of working with the sites, with the vendor as a provider or vendor, and then with the pharma companies as well, has been a very unique experience.
Yeah, you're in a unique situation because, I work for pharma manufacturers, and when you work for a pharmaceutical company, you're interacting with doctors. That's who your external stakeholder is. And then, when I worked with Viva, I'm interacting with pharma manufacturers. That was your client. But you have both, right? At Cognizant, you're in an interesting position because you're working with these healthcare systems, right? You're supporting them in terms of clinical trial site enablement and things like that. But you're also working with the pharmaceutical companies. So it's interesting. It sounds like it's very interesting work that you do. How do you think today, we're all using ChatGPT for everything. The other day I got into a little bit of a scuffle with my wife. We're arguing about something, and I saw that she went and she said to me, ChatGPT said this, and I said, ChatGPT said that. And it's like, wait a second. It's like we both talking to our AI avatars, right? Everybody now is using ChatGPT to basically answer questions about their professional and personal life. So clearly, in today's society, AI is playing a big role in impacting us. How is it changing clinical trial sites, clinical trial enablement, clinical trial capabilities? Talk to us about that.
And before I answer that question, I'm going to go back because it just brought to my mind reading the McKinsey & Company, the vision of 2025 for medical affairs.
Yep.
And I believe this is another example of where our skills, knowledge, expertise is going to have an opportunity to be expressed in different areas, and this one within the technology space or technology world. So here again, I've been now privileged, like I said, working with all these institutions, and you can see the transformation. A lot of these institutions are going through that digital transformation, trying to understand where they should invest, and making sure that that's something that's going to pay off, not just as a one thing or one-time off, if not eventually for the long run as well. And that's where I believe that having, again, and not only being at the sites or having that experience can now put you in a position to better advise or at least talk to these stakeholders. That is now changing. In my days, it used to be the ACP, but now the stakeholder is changing. Research director, regulatory people, coordinators, study managers, site directors, and whatnot. And then I want to emphasize, how do you align that with the pharma, CRAs and monitors and site account managers, and how do you bring them to work together? So it really takes a conversation. No site is the same. They all have different, needs and wants. And it's all about really having some meaningful relationship with these sites, understanding where they stand, what they need, and then being able to be a liaison between the pharma and the sites to really put some meaningful work at those institutions that will eventually pay off. So I'm seeing the digital transformation across the board. And remember, because we have a global platform, it's not just in the US. I'm actually seeing things in Asia, Europe, Latin America. So very interesting to see, the evolution, and absolutely all of them have this in mind is I need to invest, but how do I invest in the right technology? And also how do I'm able to keep a lot of the investment that I've done throughout the years, and then I can just plug and play with other systems and start sharing data where I have a lot of the information. So not always it's just about, bringing new stuff or reinventing the wheel. If not, a lot of the time I already have the systems that have worked for me for a period of time. How can I potentially plug that into another system that is then going to streamline that process or that particular workflow?
So if, there's a pharmaceutical industry CEO out there listening to the podcast, a lot of our listeners are pharma executives. What advice would you give them as an expert working in this area of technology if they want to build up and make a more robust kind of AI foundation and platform?
Yeah, I think my message would be that you have to partner with a vendor that not only brings the engineers or the product development capability, but also brings the experience or the expertise of having specialized group like we do within Cognizant. I know other software companies do have them as well, that they have that experience of being in the shoes of that particular ACP in the field, so that as you are building these technologies or you're helping to mature them, you're really coming with that lens that is not a lens of an engineer that has never been at a site
Right.
or an institution and then just wants to bring up the latest shiny tool just because it sounds cool. So I think there has to be some kind of validation process in it, and also talk from experience. Have you been on the other side? It's a
Right.
very high pace, no time, less resource every time, do
Right.
more with less,
Right.
and then be able that you're bringing that lens so that when you really put something out there, it has been already been validated either by patient advocacy groups or site advocacy groups or user advocacy groups, and then you've already kind of tested the waters and know what's really trending, what's really working, and what's not. And I think that's the way that we have done our approach. It took us a lot of investment and a lot of time, but I think we're seeing now the rewards of putting in that kind of perspective, because now when we have releases out there, we're getting higher and higher acceptance from the user, because again, they already been part of that development and they feel like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that's really important, I think, when you work for a company like Cognizant, that you include the stakeholder who's going to end up using it into the process.
Yeah.
And have them look at different iterations and versions and say, okay, is this something that is going to actually be useful to you in the field? What I found in my experience in working for a technology company is that that sometimes gets overlooked. And you can't do that, because in the end of the day, what you'll find is, like you said, you develop all these great shiny tools, these great features, and they never get utilized. Let's talk about AI, but in another way, different direction. What are some of the risks with AI? And I'll give you an example. I was on television a few days ago talking about United Healthcare, and allegedly United Healthcare had set up their AI algorithm in such a way to deny claims, prior authorization claims. So it was done in a way that was biased, where it would deny claims more than it would accept it. Okay, so they built in that bias. As a result, they've gotten a lot of criticism about this, and obviously United Healthcare has been in the news for a lot of other reasons, not great reasons. In the world you live in clinical trials, right, data, et cetera, in healthcare, what are some of the risks of AI that you would say to the audience listening they got to watch out for?
That's another great example, I think, that you bring, because it shows again the importance of within your team, cross-functional teams that are working and developing these tools, that you have different angles and different perspective as you're building your tools. Mm-hmm. So again, I remember the first days when we started, everything was very in-house focused. Actually, everything was very sponsor-driven, but the end user did not have a seat at the table. And that was creating a lot of friction. It was creating a lot of pushback, exactly for that specific reason that you're saying, that in order for you to bring something that is so scalable like an AI, you have to do it with the ethical and the compliance that is needed. And that's where, again, people who have been on the other side can help the engineers that are building these tools to understand that particular angle. May that be the patient angle, or may that be, again, the ACP angle, because that's really going to resonate when you push these things out. Then they're going to be well taken or adopted or implemented when you get to that point. So I get my point here. We have tremendous technology, but not everything applies for everything. So you really have to take, again, the valid use case, make sure that you mature it, make sure that you validate it, and then you're able to roll that out to hopefully avoid some kind of things that unwanted things.
Because my concern, I've seen this in other industries as well, is that in our quest for more speed and scalability, we compromise quality, and in this case, especially in healthcare, the safety of patients. I tell you a story. I was talking to an attorney the other day, works for a big insurance company in the U.S. I'm not going to say which one. And he was telling me that there were a few attorneys for this company that were fired because what they did was they put together a legal brief in preparation for a case, and they used AI to generate the brief. AI made up the cases. So AI just made it up. They, sometimes as an attorney, you have to have a reference case that you reference. AI just made it up. And that's crazy if you think about it, right? But what happened in this example is the attorneys didn't check. They didn't go back and check the accuracy, that quality check, right, to make sure that it is accurate. So just like United Healthcare and other situations, we're relying on the AI, and I think it's good, but we have to also be aware it's not a perfect solution. And to your point, there needs to be people that have a medical background, a scientific background that really understand it. And this is why you mentioned BCMAS, and a lot of people don't know this, but the Board Certified Medical Affairs Specialist Program, or BCMAS, it actually has in it content for how to utilize AI and digital tools, how to use it compliantly, ethically, effectively, because of what you're saying, right, which is the fact that there could be risks for patients, or there could be risks of misinformation that you got to be aware of. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I'll say two things. The first one is one of our biggest challenge was to get to that point, to be able to work cross-functional with all the different teams, legal, compliance, regulatory, medical affairs, and make sure that we all had a seat at the table. Because I think when you work like that as a cohesive unit, then you're really mitigating a lot of that risk before you launch or before you get a release. And those that work within the technology space, you only have so many options only 2 options throughout the year to really have a release. So you have to make sure, at least as much as you can, that you're bringing in the user voice, the patient voice, the ACP voice into the equation, so that when you really launch this particular capability or functionality, it's going to be well received. And then the other component is, making sure that you are expanding your team with these standards. I'm talking about the BCMAS. For us, it was about setting the standard. BCMAS was our standard. It's actually a requirement once we hire people within my particular team. BCMAS becomes a standard because I want to make sure that that's the minimum that they know of industry, especially when you have so many different stakeholders on the pharma side or on other vendors that we work or collaborate, or at the ACP level. I want to make sure that they have at least that foundation in their learning, their knowledge, so then we can go and build on top of that. So that for us, the BCMAS was very, as I was seeking for that higher bar, highest standard, thank God I came across with it, and at least for me, it was very helpful to help me not only build a global medical affairs team within my company, to really get buy-in from leadership and know that this is not Dr. Cruz saying this is the way, this industry, and the way that we are speaking and the way we want to do stuff, because that is the industry way of doing the best that we can.
And you know what? I wish that more medical affairs leaders had the perspective you had. I run into a few, not a lot, but a few medical affairs leaders who don't see the importance of establishing a standard, establishing uniformity, establishing consistency, making sure that your team is operating at the maximum level of effectiveness. I was talking to a medical affairs leader, recently, and he said, well, my team's doing okay, no one's complaining. And it was like, is that all you're looking for? It's like, well, they're doing all right, they're mediocre, we're just getting by. But wait a second, your company's invested all this money into R&D to launch a product. Don't you want to maximize the effectiveness of your drug launch? Don't you want to have the best MSL or medical affairs organization you can? Don't you want to give them all the tools, all the knowledge, all the skills, all the competencies? Why hold back? I don't get it. And I think, if you're a medical affairs leader listening out there, think about what this means to your team. Think about what it means to their motivation. Think about what it means long term. And I say this because I think today, now, more than ever, medical affairs has a lot more scrutiny, a lot more visibility, a lot more complexity. right? More than ever. I was mentioning to you over lunch, I have a meeting coming up with the FDA, and this is one of the topics is around standards. A few years ago when I met with the former head of the FDA, Dr. Janet Woodcock, this is one of the things that she was a big proponent of. It's like, we need standards for MSLs. We need standards for medical affairs. This is why we support the ACMA and what you guys do. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because I think many leaders in pharma can learn from what you're saying and from what you've built. And you've built, a tremendous organization, really nothing like it, where you're making sure that everybody is board certified, everybody meets that standard, so that you can go out with that confidence and know-how. Because in the end of the day, if I'm a pharma company and I know I'm dealing with Lester, and Lester has that foundation, Lester has that understanding, he's aligned what the standards are and the procedures are and the competencies are from a technical perspective for my industry, that gives me more trust. It gives you more credibility, right? And I think in pharma, especially post-opioid crisis, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and it's not good is not enough. We're always wanting to continue to raise the bar, and always, doing reference to those learnings that we got from that certification, bringing some case studies into our meetings so that we can all learn. Because remember, like I said, we have a global team. So we want to make sure that whatever happened in a particular region that could be helpful to the other regions, why not share it? Because that's going to elevate everyone's knowledge and standards and whatnot. So I think for us, again, is continuous look for perfection. We're never satisfied. We always want to do better. And the way you do is definitely with, these certification like the BCMAS standards within industry that we can potentially follow and make sure that all our team, as we are touching the ACP or we're touching a leader within pharma, that we know exactly what the conversation needs to go and how to talk about it.
And this year, right? Just today, I was listening to the news on the way over here. Everything that's going on with RFK Jr., he's talking about vaccines and reform, what they want to do with food and the food supply. And just 2 weeks ago, the head of the FDA, Dr. Martin McCary, talking about how they want to accelerate drug approvals. Mm-hmm. Well, now, think about it. And you know this better than me. You go from a situation where you build out an MSL team or a medical affairs team 12 to 18 months pre-launch. And what he's saying, is that, we can shorten that. We have all these technologies. We have this ability. We're actually not going to require big, hard outcomes and studies. We'll use surrogate markers. Maybe we can bring it down to 2 months, 3 months. So if I'm a medical affairs leader, if I'm a pharma company, that now creates a lot more pressure on me to make sure that I'm even more prepared. Because now what took me 18 months, I had 18 months before to do the launch. Now I've squeezed that into 2 months, right? And you know this. A McKinsey paper talked about this with drug. The number one predictor of drug launch success is medical affairs. Mm-hmm. So I can't emphasize it enough. You know what it's like? It's like you buy a Porsche and you don't put gas in the car. It's not going to go. So you have to, if you spend all this money hiring, recruiting, getting the best of the best, and then you don't give them those skills, you don't validate that, why? And then they end up moving on. I don't know if you know, MSLs in general in the industry, you know what the average tenure is? 18 months. It's terrible.
And that's one of my missions, and that's a great point, because I really believe MSLs not only need to be given the tool, but the training and the true understanding of what these tools are capable. Because we have tremendous opportunity. I'm there working with the ACPs directly, having meaningful conversation. But again, you are going to be able to potentially solve a problem at a bigger picture than just having that conversation that you have. If you do understand a lot of these technologies, and it's not the same to just look for a definition versus when you're working on this every single day. This is what we do. Technology is what we do. So I'm constantly being a preview of seeing these great advancement, and it's changing weekly, and You're seeing all this coming. And if you're not doing this on a single day, then it's not really going to stick. So my point here is that we need to make sure that these MSLs or medical affairs on the field are also being trained with the right, knowledge and information on how these technologies can be leveraged or can be used to solve bigger problems than maybe the ones that they're only focused on for a particular product or whatnot. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of the webinars training out there. They're just reading out of definitions. And it's not about definition. It's about getting a potential case study that you have in the shell, and how do you mature that to make sure that then you can apply that to a real world example within a particular institution, ACP office or whatnot. And that's where I think the potential value opportunity that we have. Then I hope that we bring more medical specialists into the software technology company, because we can be vital in making sure that we help with the process of developing, but also maturing these products. And then when they get launched, they're going to be very impactful in the society.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Let's shift a little bit into kind of a political focus, if that's okay with you. It's been about 7 months since the Trump presidency and the Trump administration took over. What are your thoughts on what the Trump administration means to pharma? Do you think they're pro-pharma? Do you think that it's not great for the pharma industry? What's your take on it?
I think what I'll say, there's a lot of impact that is being felt. I just came back from the AACI CRI annual meeting, and there was a lot of talk about some of the budget cuts that are going in clinical research, but at the same time, what I would say is also opportunity. We have an opportunity in front of us to leverage a lot of the technology that is being built in order to do more with less. And I remember, again, in my days, my coordinators, they used to manage, 15, 10, 12 trials, one person. And if we're able to standardize those tasks, those activities, meaning that they seem the same if it comes from Pharma 1 or Pharma 2 or Pharma 3, then it's going to be easier for a regulatory or coordinated person at a specific site to just click or just drop something and make it more standard. And I believe that's what our products have been brought to industry. And keep in mind, it came from a consortium of 20 of the top pharma companies in the world. So we inherited that, and then I believe that, again, standardizing the way we conduct clinical trials and then reusing a lot of the data, sharing a lot of the information that it can be shared, not at the study level, but if not at the profile level, then it's going to simplify the process of us conducting clinical trials. So I see it also as understand the challenge, but I also see the opportunity that with the right technology, the right interoperability of system, the right integration of system, we're going to be able to meet the moment that we have in front of us.
Now, a lot of people talked about some of the cuts, let's say, for the NIH and other organizations. Do you think that will impact what you guys are doing in terms of clinical trial site support or clinical trials just in general coming out and companies being able to move clinical trials more effectively through the system?
Yeah, at least because I work a lot with the commercial trials, then I haven't seen a lot of that impact. But again, coming from some of these meetings, I've heard some of the impact that it's having from the NIH grants and whatnot, especially in the cancer centers around the world. But again, I see it again as an opportunity. I think we have a responsibility to continue to evolve. Now we have tools that we didn't have in our toolbox, again, maybe 5-10 years ago. So let's start reimagining the way that we do a lot of these activities and standardizing. I think that's the key, standardizing the way. So if I bring a new coordinator, it's not going to take me a year to help develop and grow that coordinator. If not, I can train them in 3 months and get them up to speed, because it's just a matter of checking boxes or just dragging or reusing a lot of the information for multiple trials. So I think that's the opportunity that we have, and I hope we move in that direction.
Let's talk a little bit about, your particular journey, and maybe, again, people listening out there, they're going to look at you and say, I want to be like Lester. I'm a physician, I'm a pharmacist. I want to do what Lester's done. Talk to us a little bit about what do you think it takes to be able to accomplish what you've accomplished? Because you're obviously very well accomplished. You've become very successful in this field, and so congratulations to you. I mean, that's fantastic that you've been able to do that. What are some of the what do you do in the morning to kind of get yourself motivated and going? Tell us a little about your thinking. What do they need? Young people listening out there, to help them understand what it takes to be successful.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is before Lester, there was a will. And again, I say that with very pride because they're right. Because you always have to look for mentors, and you always have to look for people who have done it, maybe in different eras or different time, but with some kind of the same goals that you're looking to accomplish yourself. So I think always seeking to find mentors that can help you that already have paved the way for you to really do the work that you do. And then it comes self-motivation. You have to be self-motivated. You have to be a little bit of a passion about what you really do. And in my days when I was doing a lot of this stuff by myself, because I didn't have a team, we were in a software technology company, we didn't have the budget, we didn't have the recognition, that it was me working all the regions and making a lot of the calls and doing a lot of meetings. What is in my mind, Will, is, again, there's some patients out there that are depending on us to get this right.
Yep.
Right? In order for them to maybe have a second chance. And I think when you have that kind of passion, and all of those that really know me, I tell them all to my team all the time, the reason why I keep doing this is because I hope that someday I'm going to impact, or I'm going to be a part of changing, someone's life, a chance at life, or having a second chance, right? And all of those that have been in clinical trials, we know that a lot of times this is the last hope that they have, right,
Yep.
in order to continue with their journey. So I think having, again, that self-motivation, but having passion for what you do is what continues to drive me. And then as a leader, it's a continuous learning experience. That's why I seek accreditations like the ACMA, from the BCMAS certification. That's why I'm always constantly going through these, summits to hear from other leaders on what they're doing and what they're accomplished. So you have to be a learner of the game. And that for me never stops. And that I try to take it down to my team. So they also have the same mentality that you have to continuous educate yourself, continuous learn, continuous reading, so that you really have, you're in the forefront of what is being developed in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. I love that. I think today, especially people coming out of college, they don't understand that, what drives you really needs to be just taking pride in your work, doing a good job. Like, taking pride in the fact that I was able to accomplish it and deliver it with high quality. Why do you think that's missing?
Well, and again, I can only speak for myself, but I think for myself, when I was doing the work that I was doing, I was not thinking about, the recognition, or I was not thinking about what was I building. I was just focusing on getting a system that was headed in the wrong direction and turning it around to make sure that at least it was leading or it was helping with impact, and making sure that that system at least was able to do the basic stuff correctly. So that once you achieve that, then you can build on top of different, areas and whatnot. So I think for me, I was never thinking about, what's coming. It was just the moment. Let's do it. Let's give it the best today. Let's build something today. Let's make sure that we have the right input from, the users. Let's go out and talk to them. Let's have meaningful conversation, and then share that with the people that were building or were putting the system together, so they can hear direct feedback from real world users on what is it that I'm liking, what am I not liking. And I think by doing that, we were able to, again, improve performance, and then at the end, acceptability and implementation. So I think you really have to know your why, and you really have to focus on that. And if you work and you every day you feel that you gave it all, and then you're doing it for the right reason, I think eventually things will fall into place.
Absolutely. What is your why?
I think my why is, again, thinking that patient that was there, that is in clinical trials, that needs this drug to be commercialized faster, that has no second chance. Then now we have an opportunity now with the technology, indirect impact, but with the right technology, with the right, building the right APIs that can plug and play with other systems, and we can share data across an ecosystem faster, higher quality. I think that's what motivates me and keeps me going.
I totally agree with you. I mean, when I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, we had so many people when we were running clinical trials, and we would sometimes get the reports, the narratives of the different patients in certain studies, and hearing their testimony of how the drug changed their life was such a big motivator. And I've had the honor of working in a rare disease as well. And, in this particular rare disease, there was no option. I mean, if you didn't treat the disease, they became intellectually impaired, as the children. And so you would hear these stories of the parents and saying, this drug changed my child's life. It gave them a different path that they didn't have before. And I think we forget that sometimes, right? When we're working in our office, we're on our laptops, that the work that we're doing, if we're honest with the work that we're doing, we can help bring important medicines to patients. And I don't say that lightly.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. So I'm so happy you said that, because behind the technology, behind the board certification, behind all the things, the processes, systems, etc., this is all about patients and about what it means to a patient. I remember, you know, when I went to the FDA once, of many times, we were there and we were presenting data to the FDA, scientists there, and we brought a patient with us. Patient stood up, and she was probably in her 20s, and she said, you know, because of this drug, I can take a shower alone. Before this drug, before I was on this drug, I didn't have the strength to shampoo my hair. But now I can get through the whole shower without having to stop, without having to ask for help.
That's amazing. And that's a responsibility that we have. And
Yes.
that's what I believe, again, the evolution of coming from the clinical side to the clinical trials to now understanding pharma and now coming into the technology, I'm able to influence, or I'm able to impact those stories that if you were to put an engineer in as the lead, he will never be privy of understanding that particular rare disease. He might heard of it, but he doesn't understand it. So that's, I think, the responsibility that we have, to have a seat at the table, to make sure that we're always bringing the patient perspective or the ACP perspective into the conversation, so that when we are building these tools, we're building them with the patient in mind or with the ACP in mind, and making sure that those are going to be, helpful to the day-to-day activities that a lot of those, especially the ACP's warriors that are out there saving patients' lives and treating these diseases and whatnot, that what we bring to them is going to be something that is going to be help them with their day-to-day activities.
Absolutely agree with you. Anything else that you want to share with the audience that maybe we didn't cover?
No, I think that we have an opportunity. This is it. I've been reading all these McKinsey's, and again, from the 2020, 2025, 2030. And I think that this is the opportunity where you have a different route, that it doesn't have to be, always pharma. Yeah, if the opportunity is there, of course, but then we need some support and help in other areas within different vendors that are developing different tools. And it's very important that we always bring the patient's lens or the patient's voice into those particular tools. And again, this is a global effort. At least it's not just here in the U.S. We're also working in Latin America with Great Group. We're actually helping develop 2 new summits that are going to be launched there late this year, if not early next year.
Yep.
We're also working in Europe and working with organizations like NIHR and the government of the UK and whatnot, and other institutions. We're working in Australia with a lot of the institutions there. So I think it has to have that global lens, because patients are global. And then we really need to make sure that we have the infrastructure, but then that we also train a lot of the users, because you can have all the greatest tools, but if you don't know how to leverage them and use them, then they're not.
So wash.
So I welcome, again, the audience, especially those that are looking into new careers, to look into these technology vendors that are working within life sciences, healthcare, and medical devices, and then join forces so that we can really influence and impact the roadmap of a lot of these technologies that are going to be implemented at a lot of these facilities, institutions across the world.
Dr. Lester Cruz Serrano, it was a real pleasure having you on the podcast. It was great. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.